Snow fell soft and silent over the rooftops of Winterfell, cloaking the ancient castle in a hush that felt like a warning. The wind whispered secrets through the trees of the Godswood, where two siblings stood alone beneath the heart tree, their breaths misting the air. Arya Stark's gray eyes were hard as iron, filled with a restlessness that even returning home hadn't settled. Jon Snow watched her with quiet concern, the same kind of worry that had filled him since the day she came back changed, not just in face, but in soul. He didn't need to ask her what she was thinking. He already knew. "I'm leaving," she said, and her voice didn't tremble. Jon nodded. "To Braavos, to where I belong." Arya's gaze didn't flinch. "With a faceless man." The words stung more than he thought they would. He had just found her again, his little sister, the wild girl with the needle-thin sword and wolf's heart. But she wasn't that girl anymore. She had names on her lips like prayers. She had walked through death, worn other faces, and killed with eyes wide open. She was no child of Winterfell now. She was something else. And yet, Jon understood. He felt the same weight, the pull away from everything expected, everything duty-bound. The North loved him, but it didn't know him. To them, he was a bastard who rose. To the lords, he was a sword they could point at their enemies. But never Jon, never just Jon. "Take me with you," he said, and the word surprised them both. Arya narrowed her eyes. "You? With the faceless men?" "I don't want thrones," he said. "I don't want banners or titles. I want to be free. I want to learn how to disappear. I want to understand death the way you do." She looked at him for a long moment, the ghost of a smirk flickering at the corners of her mouth. "Then we leave tonight." And just like that, they vanished from Winterfell. No farewell to Sansa. No messages left behind. Two wolves slipping into the night. The voyage to Braavos was brutal. The sea was angry. The ship small and cheap, bought with coins stolen from a Bolton's forgotten treasury. Jon and Arya slept in the lower decks, among rats and mildew, their swords wrapped in cloth beside them. Arya taught him to listen, to watch. "Every sailor lies," she told him. "They lie with their eyes and their hands. You need to see the truth without words." He listened. At first, the faceless men refused him. Too old, too known, too noble, the kindly man said, without a hint of kindness. Arya knelt. Jon did not. The House of Black and White demanded total surrender, and Jon could not give that. Not yet. Arya stayed. She begged nothing for him. But in the dark halls of the temple, where faces hung like masks in candlelight, she whispered his name to the statues. Every night, she left him a morsel of what she learned. Watch without being seen. Speak only when a lie must be buried. Names are power. Forget yours. It was weeks before the kindly man called for him again. You seek death, but you fear it. Jon met his gaze. "I've already died." A flicker of curiosity crossed the old man's face. "Tell me." And Jon did. The wall, the night's watch, Ollie's blade, the darkness, the cold, the nothing. When he finished, the hall was silent. Even the statues seemed to listen. "You may stay," the man said, but there was a warning in his voice. "You will not become no one. You carry too much. But you may learn if death still wishes to teach you." In time, they became shadows. Jon learned the way of silence, the way of patience, the way to kill with mercy in his heart and steel in his hand. He was slower than Arya, less agile, less invisible. But he was relentless. Where Arya was a wraith, Jon was a storm, silent until he struck, and unstoppable once he did. They trained in alleys and cellars, in dark corners of Braavos where the poor vanished without notice. They wore the faces of fishmongers, guards, beggars, children. They served death as quietly as they once served family, and it changed them. Arya's laugh became rarer. Jon's eyes grew colder. One day, she returned with blood on her hands and said nothing for 3 days. Another day. He sat for hours beneath the faces in the great hall, staring at the one that looked most like his father. "Do you miss being a Stark?" Arya once asked him in the dead of night. He thought for a long time. "I don't know who that is anymore," he said. But the past never stays buried. Word reached them from a dying sailor. whispering rumors of war in the north. Sansa Stark was queen in Winterfell now, but not for long. The veil had turned. Riverrun was in flames. And in the south, a new Targaryen had risen from ashes, claiming bloodlines and banners alike. The realm they left behind had started to eat itself again. Let it burn, Arya said, but Jon wasn't so sure. What if we could stop it without names, without banners? Assassins don't save kingdoms, Arya snapped. They clean up after them. He nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time someone cleaned the Iron Throne. The cold air of Braavos clung to their skin as they stepped aboard the merchant vessel bound for Westeros. Jon stood at the bow, cloaked in black and silence, while Arya watched him from the shadows, her eyes scanning the faces of the crew. None of them knew who these two passengers really were. To them, Jon was a Sellsword named Torrhen, and Arya a mute girl with sharp eyes. But beneath the false names and calm expressions, vengeance simmered. Neither of them spoke much during the journey. Words had become tools, not comforts. When Arya did speak, it was short, precise, cold. When Jon did, it was out of necessity, not out of hope. "What's the first name?" she finally asked one evening, staring at the horizon as the sun bled into the sea. Jon didn't answer right away. The list was long now, longer than it should have been. But one name echoed louder than the rest. Littlefinger. Arya didn't flinch. "I thought Sansa handled him." "She didn't handle him," Jon said. "She played his game. And I don't trust the result." Arya gave a small nod. That was enough. The Faceless men didn't require proof. Only names. They reached Westeros through Gulltown, hidden in plain sight among pilgrims and smugglers. The smell of war was thick in the air. Banners rising, gold changing hands, alliances shifting like sand. Ravens flew like black darts between keeps. Kings and queens were too busy to notice the rats slipping through their walls. Arya moved first. She donned the face of a baker girl, barely 15, eyes wide with innocence. She made her way into the Vale disguised as a servant sent to help Lord Royce's kitchens. She watched. She listened. She learned. Littlefinger was there. Not dead. Not disgraced. Just repositioned. The Vale lords, ever suspicious of outsiders, had chosen to believe Baelish's version of events over Sansa's. She had grown too powerful, they said, too ambitious. They called her the Red Queen of the North, and whispered that her family was cursed. It wasn't long before she was pushed out of the Eyrie. Politely, formally, but pushed nonetheless. Jon met Arya in a clearing 3 leagues from the gates. She removed her false face with a hiss, like peeling off old skin. Her expression was blank. He's still breathing. Jon tightened the leather on his sword hilt. Then that's a mistake. But before they could move, a rider approached. Dust kicked up behind the horse as it barreled through the trees. Arya drew her blade, already stepping into shadow. Jon stood ready, calm. The rider slowed. Hooded, alone. He stopped 10 paces from them and dismounted. Then he pulled back the hood. Tyrion. Arya raised an eyebrow. Jon didn't blink. "I thought I'd find you two sooner or later," Tyrion said, brushing dust from his cloak. The realm's whispers grow louder when Starks vanish and corpses start piling up in Braavos. Arya said nothing. Jon only asked, "Why are you here?" Tyrion sighed. "Because Westeros is about to tear itself apart again. And this time, there's no one left to stop it." He pulled a letter from inside his coat, sealed in wax and blood. "Dragonstone is no longer empty," he said. "A girl claims to be Daenerys Targaryen reborn. Her followers call her the Ashen Queen. She is fire. She has dragons. And she has the Lords of Storms and bending the knee. She'll march north before winter ends." Jon's jaw tightened. Daenerys is dead. So was Aegon. So was Viserys. So was half the bloody dynasty, Tyrion replied. But fire has a habit of rising from ashes. Arya stepped forward now, her voice low. "And you want us to stop her?" "No," Tyrion said. "I want you to survive her. And if you're smart, help me do the same." He tossed the letter to Jon. Littlefinger's whispering in her ear now, offering her the North in exchange for a crown of his own. Sansa's already in danger. maybe all of House Stark. Jon crushed the letter in his fist. The old fire stirred in his chest. Anger, duty, guilt. We'll hand a Littlefinger, Arya said. You just stay out of our way. Tyrion raised his hands. I've learned my lesson. I never interfere with wolves when they hunt. That night, Jon and Arya crossed the river near the area and entered the state of Lord Baelish under different faces. Jon as a veil guard, Arya as a page boy. Baelish sat in his study, firelight flickering off the glint of his mockingbird pen. He didn't see the blade until it was at his throat. Do you remember us? Arya whispered in his ear. He froze. No smile, no clever words. Jon stepped out of the shadow and locked the door. Littlefinger's voice cracked. I always admired the Starks for their stubbornness. But you... Jon slammed him against the wall. You're the reason our family broke. You fed lies, turned kin against kin, and now you crawl back under new queen. Baelish struggled. You don't understand. This war is bigger than your grief. Jon didn't let him finish. The blade slid across the man's throat with surgical precision. Clean, cold, final. He collapsed without a sound. Arya stepped over him, wiped the blade on his silk robes. No faces for traitors, she said. Jon looked down at the body. One name off the list. But the war had only just begun, because the Ashen Queen had already set sail. The snow fell soft and silent over its wings black as pitch. Its eyes the color of ancient castle in a hush that the bird landed on a branch outside. The wind whispered secrets through the trees in the godswood stillness, where Arya siblings stood alone beneath the heart tree. She'd seen ravens their breaths misting the air. But this one watched Arya Stark's gray eyes were hard as iron. Jon stepped closer, filled with a restlessness, took the scroll from his leg, home and unrolled the parchment. Jon Snow watched her with quiet concern and dread. The same kind of worry that had filled him since the day she came back. No name. Not just in face, but in soul. Sansa must need to ask her what she was thinking. Winterfell already 3 days. I'm leaving, she was wise, she said. The handwriting was sharp, too elegant. Jon nodded. But Braavos, Arya read between the lines. To where I belong. She's giving Sansa Arya's gaze a choice she never gave anyone else. Faceless man, she said flatly. The words stung more than he thought they would. Or he had just found her again. Sansa, his little sister, long enough to make a point. The wild girl with the they sat in silence as the snow thickened around them. But she wasn't that girl Arya anymore. Stared into the fire. She had names on her lips like prayers. But Jon didn't reply right away. Worn other faces, he was staring at the flames with eyes that might offer him a different path. She was no child time in weeks. Now. He looked something else. She has dragons, he said. Jon understood. We've killed worse. He felt the same weight. She has people. The pull away Jon from everything expected. Desperate people. Everything duty-bound. She's offered revenge in fire and blood. But it didn't know him. That's harder to kill than a beast. He was a bastard who Arya's voice dropped. To the Lords. You're not afraid of was a sword they could point at their enemies. You're afraid of who she reminds you of. Never Jon. He didn't answer. Never just Jon. He didn't need to. Take me with you, they both remembered the real Daenerys. Surprised them both. The one Jon Arya narrowed her eyes. The one who had touched the scars with soft hands, and then I don't want fire on innocence. I don't want. He saw the same storm building again. I want to be free. Only this time. I want to learn how to love blinding him. I want to understand death the way you doubt. Arya looked at him for a long moment. If we wait, the ghost of the smoke flickering at the corners of her mouth. Then we leave. She takes the north before we even breathe. And just like that, Jon nodded from Winterfell. Then we don't wait. Farewell to Sansa. Winterfell was a fortress. No messages left behind. Its walls have been reinforced with stone slipping into the night. Banners stitched with dire wolves flying high in defiance. The sea was angry. Sansa Stark stood at small and cheap, colder bought and with coins stolen from a molten forgotten treasury. Time had changed her. Jon and Arya had slept in lower decks, and trust was rats and mildew. When their swords wrapped in Arya stepped through, Arya taught him shadows with Jon behind her. Every sailor didn't smile. She told him. She didn't. They lie with their eyes. She only stared. You vanished, to see the truth, Sansa said, without words. And now you return with blood in your eyes. At first. We came to save the North. Refuse him, Jon replied. Too old, from too fire, too noble. Sansa didn't blink. The kindly man said, left without a hint of kindness. The tension was thick enough to cut Jon did sword. Not. The House of Black and White demanded total surrender. There's no time for blame, and Jon could not give that. Not yet. Sansa's voice stayed. You don't know what I've done for this castle, but in the dark halls, you don't know what I've given up. Where faces hung like masks in candlelight. Then tell us. She whispered his name to the statues. But before she could, every night, horns blew. She left him a single blast. What she learned. Long, deep, watch without being the kind of sound that shakes marrow. Only when everyone froze. Buried. Arya
Names
ran
are
to
power.
the battlements. Forget yours.
John followed.
It was
Heart
weeks
pounding.
before the kindly
And
man
there she
called
was,
for him again. The Ashen
You
Queen.
seek death, but you
She
fear
stood
it.
on the hill opposite
John
the
met
castle,
his gaze,
draped in
I've
black
already
and red.
died.
Silver hair,
A flicker of curiosity
crossed the
behind
old
her.
man's face.
A host of soldiers spread across the field.
And John
like
did.
building
The wall.
And in the sky
The
above,
Night's Watch.
one dragon,
Ollie's
wings
blade.
outstretched,
The darkness.
eyes glowing with pale
cold.
flame. The
Arya
nothing.
stared.
When he
She looked
finished,
just like her.
the hall was
But
silent.
John didn't speak.
Even the statues'
His
seemed
eyes
to
were
listen.
locked on the dragon.
You may stay,
And the woman
the
who
man
claimed
said,
his aunt's throne.
but there was a warning
She's
in his
not
voice.
Daenerys.
You
he
will
said.
not become no
She's
one.
something worse.
You carry too much.
She was made in fire.
But you may learn
not
if
born
death
from
still
it.
wishes to teach you.
Inside the war room,
In time,
chaos
they became
unfolded.
shadows.
Northern
John
lords
learned
argued.
the way of silence.
Some called
The
for
way of
surrender.
patience.
Others called
The
for
way to
battle.
kill with mercy. in his
Sansa
heart
said
and
nothing.
steel in his hand.
She stared at the map.
He was slower than
unmoving,
Arya,
less
her
agile,
fingers
less
drumming
invisible.
against the wood.
But he was
She's
relentless.
bluffing.
Lord
Where
Selwyn
Arya was
said.
a wraith.
She can't
John
burn
was a
Winterfell
storm.
in 3 days.
Silent until he struck,
not
and
with snow
unstoppable
thick
once
on
he
the ground.
did.
They trained
Arya
in alleys
slammed
and
a
cellars
dagger into
in
the
dark
table.
corners of Braavos.
She doesn't
with
need
poor
3
vanish
days.
without notice.
She needs
They wore
one.
the faces of
You've seen what
fishmongers,
dragons
guards,
can do.
beggars,
John
children.
looked at Sansa.
They served death
What are
as
you
quietly
thinking?
as they once served
Sansa's
family.
eyes
And it changed
lifted.
them.
Cold,
Arya's laugh became
calculated.
rarer.
I'm
John's
thinking the
eyes
North
grew
is
colder.
tired of fighting
One
wars
day,
for Southern queens.
she returned with blood on her hands.
Arya
and
stepped
said
forward.
nothing for 3
We're not
days.
fighting for a queen.
Another day.
We're fighting to stop
He sat for
one.
hours beneath
She
the
has the
faces in the
veil.
great hall. Sansa whispered,
Staring at the one
They
that
swore
looked
to
most
her.
like his father.
House Grafton.
Do you miss being
House
a Stark?
Redford. They followed
Arya
Baelish's
once asked
trail
him,
in
right
the
to
dead
the
of
feet.
night.
She
She
thought for a
promised
long
them power.
time.
I don't know who that
vengeance.
is anymore. He said.
John's voice
But
was
the
steady.
past never
Then
stays
we take
buried.
it back. Word reached them from
Sansa
dying sailor.
shook her head,
whispering
with what
rumors of war
army?
in the north.
Arya
Sansa
answered
Stark
first.
was queen in Winterfell
We don't need an
now,
army,
but not for long.
And John
the
followed.
veil had turned.
We just need one
River
good
Run
kill.
was in flames.
That night,
and in the
Arya
south,
disappeared.
a new Targaryen
No one saw
had
her
risen
leave.
from ashes.
No one heard her steps,
claiming bloodlines
but
and
she
banners
wore a new
alike.
face.
The realm they
scared
left
northern
behind
girl.
had started to eat
Pale,
itself again.
dirty,
Let it burn.
weeping.
She
Arya
made her
said.
way to the
But
Ashen
John
Queen's
wasn't so
camp just
sure.
before dawn.
What if we could stop
Trembling
it
with a
without
story about
names,
betrayal
without
and
fear?
banners?
They let her
Assassins
in,
don't save
and
kingdoms.
that was their first mistake.
Arya snapped.
Back in Winterfell,
They clean up after them.
John prepared for
He
what might
nodded
be his final
slowly.
war.
Then maybe
He stood
it's
beneath
time
the
someone
heart tree in
created
the
Iron
God's
Throne. The snow falling heavier now, as if the old gods wept for what was coming. Ghost sat beside him, silent. Sansa joined him there, arms crossed. You still think you can save her? She asked. No, John replied, but I can stop her. Sansa studied him. You always were too willing to die for the right cause. John turned to her. You were always willing to survive for the wrong one. Their eyes met, and then the second horn blew. The Ashen Queen had moved. The dragon had taken flight, and Arya was already inside her tent. The cold air of Braavos clung to their skin. Braziers
as they
glowed
stepped
in each
aboard
corner.
the merchant vessel
Their
bound
coals
for
pulsing
Westeros.
like dying stars.
John stood at the
casting
bow,
long,
cloaked in
flickering
black
shadows
silence,
along the crimson walls.
while Arya watched him from
Arya
shadows.
stood just inside the
Her
entrance,
eyes
scanning the
face
faces of the
soaked
crew
with fake tears.
None of them knew
Her
who
shoulders
these two
hunched,
passengers really
her
were.
posture small.
To them, the guards
John was
barely
a
looked at her
word named
as they
Torn,
pulled back the
and
flap.
Arya, a
and
mute
shoved
girl
her
with
in
sharp
with impatient
eyes.
hands.
But beneath the
She
false
stumbled
names
forward
and calm
and
expressions,
dropped to her knees.
vengeance simmered.
The Ashen Queen
Neither of them
sat alone
spoke
at the
much
center,
during the journey.
draped in black
Words
silk
had
and
become
dragonbone
tools,
armor,
not
Her hair
comforts.
was silver like
When
moonlight.
Arya did speak,
her
it was
eyes
short,
pale violet,
precise,
and empty.
cold.
She
When
studied
John
Arya
did, it
as
was
one
out of
might study
necessity,
a wounded
not out of
animal.
hope. Mild
What's the first
curiosity.
name? But no
She
empathy.
finally asked one evening.
Behind her,
Staring
a
at
young
the horizon
scribe
as the sun
scribbled
bled
notes
into the
silently.
sea. No one
John
else
didn't
spoke.
answer right away.
Who are you?
The list
The
was
queen
long
asked
now.
softly,
Longer
her voice
than it
so
should have
smooth
been.
it barely stirred
But
the air.
one name echoed
I'm Nella,
louder
milady.
than the rest.
Arya whispered.
Littlefinger. Her voice
Arya
quivering
didn't
with fear.
flinch.
I thought
barreled
Sansa
on.
handled him.
My brother said the
She
North
didn't
turned
handle
against
him.
you.
John
But
said,
I wanted to come.
She played his
I
game.
believe in fire.
And I don't trust the result.
The Ashen Queen
Arya
tilted
gave
her
a
head.
small nod.
Do you?
That was
Arya
enough.
nodded vigorously.
The faceless men
I saw what they did
didn't
to your
require
kin.
proof.
What they said
Only
about
names.
your queen.
They reached
never gave her a
Westeros through
chance.
Goldtown. The
Hidden in
queen's
plain
expression
sight
didn't
among
change.
pilgrims and
She
smugglers.
studied Arya like
The
a
smell
mirror.
of war was thick in
Then,
the air.
Finally,
Banners rising,
she stood,
gold
changing
changing
closer.
hands.
Alliances
obeyed.
shifting like sand.
The queen circled her
Ravens
like a
flew
vulture
like
made of
black
silk
darts
and
between
shadows.
keeps.
Her
Kings
footsteps
and
made no
queens were too
sound.
busy to notice the
She
rats
reached out,
slipping through their
brushed a
walls.
cold finger along
Arya moved
Arya's
first.
cheek.
She
looked
donned the
familiar.
face of a baker girl. Arya's heart barely 15, eyes wide with innocence. She made her way into the veil. Everyone says I look like my mother. Sent to help Lord Royce's kitchen. She cried for the Dragon Queen too. She listened. The Queen nodded slowly. Littlefinger was there. Then you'll serve me well. Not dead. She turned back toward a throne of bones and flame. The Veil Lords, ever suspicious of outsiders, had chosen to believe Baelish's version of events over Sansa's. One guard reached for her shoulder. Too powerful. He never touched it. Too ambitious. They called her the Red Queen and drove a dagger through his throat and whispered that her before the others could react. It wasn't long before blades pushed out of the eyrie. The scribe screamed. The queen turned, but pushed nonetheless. Too late. Jon met Arya leapt in a clearing 3 leagues, all shadow and steel. She removed her false face with a hiss. But the queen moved, like peeling off old faster skin. Than Arya had her expected. Expression was blank. A roar split the air. Breathing. The canvas Jon tightened the leather behind her on his sword as the dragon's head then crashed to the side of the tent. But before they could glowing with molten death, rider approached. Arya dust kicked up behind the horse as it everything went white. Arya drew her blade. Already Jon saw the fire before he heard it. The flames lit up the southern horizon like a false sunrise. Hooded, then came the roar. Alone, the terrible, endless sound of a dragon in dismounted rage. Then he pulled back, breath caught. His heart pounded. Arya raised an eyebrow without a word. Jon didn't blink. He mounted his horse and rode out. I thought I'd find you two sooner or later. Ghost followed. Tyrion said, silent as brushing dust from his cloak. No one tried to stop him. The realm's whispers grew louder when Stark's vanished. The battlefield was chaos. Start piling up in Braavos. Soldiers screamed and scattered as the dragon twisted above. Jon only asked, flaming the treetops. Why are you here? Confused and Tyrion sighed. Jon saw the Westeros was about to tear itself apart again. Scorched crater where flames still danced. There's no one left. Bodies littered the snow. He pulled a letter from inside his coat. He leapt sealed in wax and blood and ran into the Dragonstone is no longer empty. He shouted. He said, "Arya, a girl claims to be Daenerys Targaryen reborn, and the crackle of fire. Her followers call her the Ashen Queen. A figure stumbled from the trees. She has dragons half burned, and she has a lord of storms and bending the knee, barely standing. She'll march north when I swollen shut." Blood on her hands, but alive. Daenerys Jon caught her before she fell. So was Aegon. Missed. So was Viserys. She wasn't half the bloody dynasty. She moved like smoke. But fire has a habit of rising from heart thuddings. You're not dying. Arya stepped forward. You hear me? Her voice lips twisted in a dry smile. And you want to stop her? I've already died once. Tyrion said. I want you to survive her. Arya was treated in silence. Help me do the same. The Maester said he tossed the letter to Jon. He didn't understand the wound. Littlefinger's whispering at the ear like burns, offering her the north in exchange for a crown of his own. Jon stood by her side, already in danger. Fury building inside like pressure behind a dam. Jon crushed the letter in his fist. She had seen death fire dance around it. And now she knew who Arya was. Well, that changed everything. Arya said. Jon walked into the war room. You just stay out of our way. The next morning, Tyrion raised his hand. The lords fell silent. I've learned my lesson. She's not trying to win. I never interfere with wolves when they hunt. She's trying to destroy. That night, Jon and Arya crossed the river near the area. So what do we do? Lord Baelish, wait for another assassination to fail. Jon is a veil guard. No, Arya as a page boy. We ride out. Baelish sat in his study. I face her myself. Firelight flickering. The lords muttered in protest. Mockingbird pin. Sansa stood. He didn't see the blade. She'll burn you alive at his throat. Do you remember us? He turned to her, whispered in his ear, eyes cold as a north. He froze. I've died before. Smile. Maybe that's what it takes. Jon stepped out of the shadow room and wrapped in bandages. Littlefinger's face a mask of bruises. I always admire the Stark for their stubbornness. So do I. But you. Sansa stared at the Jon slammed him against the wall. Then I'm left here. You're the reason our family holding this castle together. You fed lies, while both turn of you kin against die. And now Jon you crawl back under new queen. We're not doing this for glory, Baelish struggle, or revenge. You don't understand. We're doing it. So this war is bigger than to hold together. A moment of silence. Jon didn't let him finish. Sansa, the blade slid across the man's throat. Then take her head. Surgical precision. The army marched at dusk. Cold. But it wasn't an army. He collapsed without a sound. Jon. Arya stepped over him. A hand blade on his silk robes. Ghost. No faces for faces wrapped, she said. Footsteps Jon looked down at the body. They passed like wind one name trees, off the list, slipping past. But the war had only just begun. Cutting through because the Ashen Queen had already set sail. She had relocated after the fire. Moved closer to the river, built a new encampment with heavier guards and thick metal walls. But dragons don't sleep forever. And tonight, Jon had no intention of sneaking. He wanted her to see him. He wanted her to remember the man who killed Daenerys Targaryen. And now, he was ready to kill her shadow, too. The moon hung high above the trees, its pale light slicing to the black like a blade. Jon crouched in the brush beside Arya, his hand resting on Ghost's neck, the direwolf silent as snow. Across the riverbank, the Ashen Queen's camp flickered with torchlight. Tents arranged in rings like ritual circles, guarded by men in black-scaled armor. Her dragon slept at the edge of the clearing, its long body curled around a scorched patch of earth that still steamed in the night. She's in the center tent, Arya whispered, her voice still raspy from the burns. "I couldn't see guards inside, but she doesn't need them." Jon didn't respond. He kept watching the dragon. Its breathing was slow, but steady. Its wounds had healed unnaturally fast. No ordinary beast. No ordinary fire. And the queen? She looked at Arya through the flames like death wasn't even a concept. Something was wrong. "Ghost, and I will go straight in," Jon said. "If she calls the dragon by me time. You know how." Arya smirked despite herself. "You still fight like a soldier, and you still kill like a ghost." They touched foreheads, just briefly. No words. The Starks never needed many. Then they moved. Ghost slipped across the river like a specter, his pale coat reflecting moonlight in flashes. Jon followed closely, blade drawn, feet light. The guards barely reacted. One turned, just in time to see fangs. No scream. Jon was already inside the camp's outer ring. Arya split out behind him, vanishing into shadows. She counted tents, measured steps, mapped escape routes in her mind without pausing. Her fingers brushed the second face in her satchel, just in case. She didn't like using that one. It looked too much like Catelyn. Jon reached the main tent. 2 guards stood outside. They were more ceremonial than dangerous. One of them lit a pipe, turning away from his post, and that was all Jon needed. He was on them in seconds. The first collapsed without a sound. The second turned, raising an alarm. Too late. Jon burst through the flap and froze. The Ashen Queen was waiting, alone, standing by a map table lit by blue fire. She didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She only turned and smiled. "I was wondering when you'd stop hiding." Jon leveled Longclaw at her. "You're not Daenerys." "No," she said calmly. "But I remember her. I remember the fire, the chains, the screams." She was so close to becoming what the world needed, but she was too human, too weak. "You're her shadow," Jon said, "or her ghost." "I'm her vengeance," the queen replied. "I'm what she could have been if you hadn't driven that knife into her heart." Jon didn't move. She would never have come back as this. The queen stepped forward. The blue fire cast flickering shadows across her face, but her expression didn't change. "You're right. She didn't. Something else did." And suddenly, Jon felt it. The cold. The kind he hadn't felt since the wall. Since beyond the wall. Not death. Not ice. But something older. Something darker. The fire in the tent dimmed. Like a breath had sucked the life out of it. "You're not just her," Jon whispered. "You're something else. Something from beyond." The queen tilted her head. "You've died once. You know what it's like, don't you? That silence. That weight. I come from there. And I'm not alone." And behind her, the dragon stirred. Its eyes opened, and they weren't gold or red. They were blue, like the ones Jon had seen in his nightmares. Like the Night King's. The air snapped with cold. Arya burst into the tent, blades drawn, just as the dragon outside screamed, a sound like steel tearing through stone. "It's woken," she shouted. But Jon didn't look away from the queen. "You made a white of a dragon," he said softly. "How?" She smiled again. "You buried the Night King, but not his shadow. It found a new body, a new queen, fire and ice, death and vengeance." She stepped toward him. "Now give me what I came for, Jon Snow. Give me the North." Jon lunged. Steel met shadow. She caught the blade with bare hands. And it didn't cut. Arya struck from behind, her dagger aiming for the spine. But the queen spun, catching her midair and slamming her into the map table with inhuman strength. Arya gasped. The wind knocked from her lungs. The tent filled with cold. The dragon roared again, and the ground trembled. Jon tried again, swinging with all his strength. But the queen caught Longclaw's blade with her palm, and this time it began to freeze. The Valyrian steel cracked. "Impossible," he breathed. "You brought the blade that killed her," she whispered. "How poetic." Then Arya, barely able to stand, reached into her coat and threw something small, glass, glinting, glowing. The tent exploded in light. Dragon glass. It didn't kill her, but it knocked her back, screaming. Jon grabbed Arya, dragging her out just as the tent collapsed in blue fire behind them. The dragon rose above the trees, its wings lighting the sky in sapphire. They ran, not for surrender, not for escape, but because now they knew what they were fighting. Not just a false queen, but the rebirth of death itself. Snow blasted sideways as Jon and Arya ran through the trees. The dragon shrieked behind them, splitting the sky like thunder. Blue flames scorched the treetops, turning pine needles to ash and bark to cinders. Ghost darted beside them, growling low and steady, the only sound more terrifying than the dragon's wing beats above. Jon stumbled as his foot hit a frozen root. He caught himself, half dragging Arya behind a collapsed log. They landed hard, hearts hammering, breaths fast and ragged. She didn't burn, Arya gasped. I stabbed her, I saw the blade hit, but her skin didn't even break. Jon wiped frost from his brow, his eyes burning. She's more than magic, more than human. She's not just wearing Daenerys' face. She's made of something older. Arya nodded grimly. She didn't bleed, but she felt the dragon glass. We need more. Jon glanced back toward the smoke rising behind them. We'll never get close again. A blast of blue fire lit the sky like a second moon. Arya looked up. Then we don't go to her. Jon met her eyes and understood instantly. We bring her to us. They reached Winterfell just after dawn. Jon's cloak was soaked through, his fingers numb. Arya limped badly, her shoulder bruised from the queen's strike. Ghost padded silently through the courtyard ahead of them, his fur singed and streaked with soot. Sansa met them at the gates, surrounded by guards, her eyes sharp and disbelieving. You were supposed to kill her, she said without emotion. We tried, Jon said, brushing past her. Arya followed. She's not a queen, Sansa. She's something else. Something dead. They moved fast, into the great hall, down into the crypts, then deeper. Beneath the castle were old tunnels, built during the Age of Heroes, sealed off and forgotten. Jon remembered them from childhood tales, half legend, half truth. Sansa followed, tight-lipped but alert. I need the old forge, Jon said. Arya opened a sack. Inside were the shards of broken weapons, some obsidian, some Valyrian steel, what little they had taken from the Faceless men's vault before they left Braavos. She handed them to Jon. We're not running anymore, she said. In the hours that followed, Winterfell changed. The gates were sealed. The townsfolk brought inside. Oil barrels rolled to the battlements. Raven cages opened. One bird sent to every remaining northern house, another to the citadel, and one to the wall. A message only 4 words long. The dead were fire. In the godswood, Jon knelt before the heart tree, blade across his knees, not praying, not hoping, just remembering. Robb, Rickon, Bran, his father, his mother, and Daenerys. He whispered, if there's anything you left in her, forgive me for what I have to do. She came the next night, not in secret, not quietly. She flew in low, the dragon's wings blacking out the stars, blue fire dripping from its fangs. Her army followed on foot, a tide of armor and firelight that stretched for miles. And she led them, cloaked in flame, riding atop the beast like a goddess of death. Sansa stood on the wall, stiff as stone. She's coming straight for the godswood. She thinks it's where we'll make our last stand. Arya said. She's right, Jon added, because it was a trap. In the heart of the godswood, beneath the weirwood tree, they'd built a ring of dragon glass, melted down and forged into spikes, chains, and pits. Old magic had soaked into the roots here, stronger than most men understood. Maesters had written about it. The children of the forest had bled for it. It wasn't a battlefield. It was an execution chamber. She wants to see who stands between her and the throne, Arya said. Let's show her. Jon nodded. I face her, he said. Arya turned to him. And if she doesn't come alone, then I make her. The dragon landed just inside the godswood, its talons dug deep into the earth, tearing through the soil like parchment. Its breath steamed against the cold as the Ashen Queen climbed down. Her cloak of black silk flowed behind her, untouched by snow or wind. Her silver hair rippled like fire in reverse. "Jon Snow," she said. His name sounded strange on her lips, familiar and foreign at once. He stepped forward. "Alone. No sword drawn. You know what you are." "I know what you made me," she replied. "You're not Daenerys." "I'm what she would have become," the queen said softly, "if you had let her finish her dream." Jon kept walking. "You're a mistake." The dragon stirred behind her, wings shifting. "I bring peace," she said. "The final kind. No more betrayal. No more war. No more lies. Only stillness." Jon stopped 10 paces from her. "You bring death." She smiled. "That's all there's ever been." And then the ground exploded beneath her. Chains of dragonglass sprang up from hidden trenches, snapping around her ankles, her wrists, her throat. She screamed, but not in pain, in rage. The dragon lunged, but ghosts flew from the trees, latching onto its throat. Oil-covered arrows rained down from the towers. Flames lit the forest, and Arya dropped from the tree above, twin blades of obsidian flashing toward the queen's heart. But again, the queen moved. She caught one blade, twisted, flung Arya to the snow. Jon roared and charged. Longclaw was no longer whole, but its jagged, obsidian-tipped remnant was enough. He drove it toward her chest. It met her flesh and stopped. She looked at him, eyes wide with fury and fear. "You can't kill death," she hissed. Jon's voice was ice. "I already did once." Then Arya, from behind, drove a second blade through her spine. Her scream shattered the air. The fire dimmed. The dragon faltered. And for the first time, she bled. The moon hung high above the Ashen Queen's throat. Was pale, unlike slicing Jon or Arya had ever heard. Jon crouched in the brush beside Arya. It wasn't dragging. His hand resting on. It was a sound that seemed coming from the dire wolf, silent as snow, deep, across the riverbank, furious. The Ashen Queen's camp flickered with torchlight. The snow turned to steam in a sudden ritual circle, unnatural heat, guarded by men in black chains of dragonglass binding her dragon slept at the edge of the clearing, cracking and melting. Its long body curled around a scorched patch of earth that still steamed. Her hand slick with the queen's in the center black blood. Arya whispered. It burned like acid. Her voice still raspy from the burns, hissing and bubbling. I couldn't see guards inside, but she doesn't shaking her hand. Her knuckles already blistering. He kept watching. She's bleeding. Its breathing was slow. We can kill her. Its wounds had healed unnaturally fast. She turned to Jon ordinary beast. Her face a twisted mass of pain and hatred. And the queen, her eyes flickered. She looked at Arya, pale flames like ice blue. Wasn't even a concept. Then something black and something was wrong. Shadows slithered beneath her skin, like Jon trapped inside. If she calls a dragon by me, she gritted her teeth. And the dragonglass changed. Arya smirked despite herself. "You think this ends me?" She rasped. "You still fight like a soldier. You think death fears your steel? And you still kill like a ghost." Jon raised long claws, broken. They touched foreheads, just the jagged obsidian tip, no words, pulsing with heat. The Starks never needed many. "But I'm not just steel anymore." Ghost slipped across the river like a specter. One step, his pale coat reflecting moonlight and flashes. Jon followed closely. Blade breath came out in sharp light. Furious guards barely reacted. Then the ground one turned from the shadows of the godswood. No dragon roared. Jon was rose above the camp's its wings expanding like Arya split out behind him, mouth glowing vanishing into shadows. It saw its queen balance. It saw her bleeding, and it mapped escape routes in her mind without Jon didn't move. Her fingers brushed the second face in her satchel, just in case. The dire she didn't like using that. It looked crashing into the dragon's jaw just as it reached the main flame. Two guards missed Jon by inches. They were more ceremonial, striking the branches above instead. One of them igniting the godswood in a burst away from sapphire light, and that was flames all Jon needed. Jon was on them in seconds. The blade plunged deep into the collapsed without a sound. The second turned. She gasped, not in pain, but in shock. Jon burst and clutched at the air and froze. And then she began to split. The Ashen Queen was waiting. The shadows inside her fought to stay standing by a map table lit. Her skin cracked. Blue fire. Light pouring from within. She didn't flinch. Not red, not orange, but cold white. She only turned like moonlight trapped in a corpse. I was wondering when you stopped hiding. You don't understand. Jon leveled Longclaw. I was chosen. You're not Daenerys. Jon leaned in close. No, she said. So was I. But and with the final twist of the blade, I remember the light erupted, the chain, she exploded, the scream, fire, but in smoke she was so close to becoming what the world needed. A shockwave of cold that flattened the snow. She was too human, silenced the dragon, too weak, and knocked Arya, her shadow, Jon to the ground. Jon said, then silence, or her ghost, pure. I'm her
Heavy.
vengeance.
Still, the queen
The
replied.
dragon staggered.
I'm what she could have been
Its
if
eyes
you hadn't
flickered,
driven that
blue,
knife into her
then
heart.
gray.
John
Then it
didn't
collapsed.
move. She
Dead.
would never have come back
For real
as
this time.
The
Ghost
queen
limped
stepped
toward
forward.
John, blood in
The
his
blue
white
fire
fur,
cast
but
flickering
his eyes
shadows
calm.
across her face.
John sat in the
But
snow,
her expression didn't
breathing
change.
hard, covered
You're
in
right.
ash and ice.
She didn't.
Arya knelt
Something else
beside
did.
the place where the queen had
And
been.
suddenly,
John
nothing was
felt it.
left. The
Not
cold,
bone,
the kind
not
he
cloth,
hadn't felt since the
not
wall.
a single ember,
Since beyond
just
the wall.
melted snow,
Not
and
death,
a faint circle of
not
soot.
ice.
But
Winterfell
something
rang with
older.
silence.
Something
The battle
darker.
never came.
The fire
The
in the
Ashen
tent
Queen's
dimmed.
army had scattered
Like a
at
breath
dawn,
had sucked the life out of
disoriented,
it. You're
terrified.
not just her.
Some claimed
John
the
whispered.
dragon turned on
You're
them.
something
Others
else.
said they saw her vanish.
Something
in a
from
flash
beyond.
of white light. The
Sansa
queen
watched
tilted
the
her
walls
head as the banners
died
of the veil
once.
fell.
You
John
know what
was
it's
like,
like,
don't
foot.
you?
That
Dragging
silence,
a broken blade,
that weight,
and a broken shoulder.
I come from there.
Arya beside
And I'm not
him,
alone.
limping, and
Her
behind
hands
her,
wrapped in cloth.
the dragon stirred.
Ghost walked behind
Its
them,
eyes open,
never more than a
and
step
they weren't
away.
gold or red.
No victory
They were
songs
blue,
were sung,
like the ones
no
John
horns
had
were
seen
blown. In his
Only the
nightmares.
quiet awe of those
Like
who
the
knew
night
the storm
kings.
had passed.
The air
Sansa
snapped
met them in the
cold.
courtyard.
Arya burst
Arya
into
said
tent,
nothing.
blades drawn,
Just dropped to her
just
knees
as the dragon
and rested her
outside
head against
screamed.
Sansa's stomach.
A sound like
John
steel
looked
tearing
up at
through
the tower.
stone.
It's
over.
woken, she
Sansa's
shouted.
voice was
But
steady.
John didn't look
Is
away from the
it-
queen.
John
You made
looked
a
past
white
her
of a dragon
toward the north.
He said softly.
For now,
How?
They burned the
She
last
smiled
dragon
again.
glass that night.
You buried the Night
melted
King,
the shards,
but not his shadow.
buried what can be
It
destroyed.
found a new body.
The old
a
gods
new
didn't
queen.
speak.
Fire
But the
and
wind
ice,
to the trees,
death
sounded
and vengeance.
almost like approval.
She stepped toward
Arya
him.
stood at the edge
Now
of the
give me what
godswood,
I came for.
watching the
Jon
last
Snow.
embers die.
Give me the
You
north.
leaving again?
John
lunged.
asked behind her.
Steel met
She
shadow.
nodded. She
There's
caught the
more
blade
out
with
there.
bare hands.
If that
and
thing
it didn't
came
cut
back through her, Arya
it
struck
might
from
try
behind.
again.
Her dagger
someone
aiming
else.
for the spine.
John looked
But
up
the queen
at the stars.
spun,
Then
catching
we'll
her
be ready.
midair and slamming her
Arya
into the map
turned.
table with inhuman
I'm not coming
strength.
back, John.
Arya gasped.
Not this time.
The wind knocked from her
He didn't
lungs.
argue.
The tent
Where?
filled with cold.
Wherever the dead
dragon
walk.
roared again.
They
and the
embraced
ground
like
trembled.
strangers who used
John
to be
tried
family.
again.
There was no
Swinging
sadness,
with all his strength.
only
But
understanding.
the queen caught Longclaw's
Sansa watched
blade
from
with
the
her
tower
palm.
window,
And this
the
time
north had
began
been
to
saved
freeze.
again.
The
But it had
Valyrian
cost
steel
more than
cracked.
swords and fire.
Impossible.
It had
he
cost
breathed.
pieces of
You
all
brought
of
the
them.
blade that
Weeks
killed
later,
her.
a
She
merchant in
whispered.
Pento
How
swore he
poetic.
saw a girl with
Then
great
Arya,
eyes and a
barely
face
able to
that
stand,
didn't belong to her,
reached into her coat.
A Sel's
and through
word in
something
Volantis
small,
spoke of a
glass,
silent man
glinting,
who looked like a Stark,
glowing.
but
The
never
tent
gave his name.
exploded in light.
And far
Dragon
beyond the wall,
glass.
in the
It
cold
didn't kill
places
her,
where fire
but it
doesn't
knocked
burn.
her back.
Whispers spread
Screaming.
of something stirring
John
and dark.
grabbed Arya.
The world
dragging
called
her
it
out
peace.
just as the tent
But
collapsed.
Arya
and blew
Stark,
fire behind them.
blade at her back.
The dragon rose
facing
above
above
the
the
trees.
knew better.
Its wings
Because
lighting the
death never
sky in
dies.
sapphire.
It only
They
waits for a
ran,
new name,
not for surrender,
not for escape, but because now they knew what they were fighting. Not just a false queen, but the rebirth of death itself.